Thank you for tuning in to the Layman's Christianity podcast, a practical perspective on Christian belief. Thank you so much for listening into the Layman's Christianity podcast. My name is Luke, and I'm happy to have you. Today I'm going to be talking to you about a common yet very confusing phrase used in the Christian world. After a previous podcast, a supportive listener asked me, "Hey, could you explain what it means to seek the Lord?" And now I'll gladly do just that. Just a side note, feel free to ask me to clarify anything that you hear me say on the podcast that might be confusing. After all, my purpose for this podcast is to be as clear and concise as possible. Now on to the phrase, to seek the Lord. To seek, as we all know, means to try to find something. You're looking for something. You're pursuing something. And I guess the most important point I want to make with this word is that seeking is active. It is never passive. The Lord refers to either God, Jesus, or the Holy Spirit. And as I talked about in a previous episode, they are all God. So to refer to a specific doesn't do a disfavor to another. So when I say the Lord, I'm referring to God as a whole. It could either mean Jesus, it could mean the Holy Spirit, or it could mean the Father. But when I say the Lord, I mean God. Well, how do I pursue God? Is he in the clouds? Is he in heaven? Is he all around me? Is he in my heart? And the plain answer is yes. So if location isn't a problem, why is it hard to find him, to be in his presence? I guess the best answer is we get distracted or we don't want to find him. There's a few reasons why we don't want to find him and we get distracted. First off, the idea of sin, doing what is against what God designed humans to do, is oftentimes more desirable. And if we choose sin as our master, as the one we pursue, of course we can't see God out. Also distractions, sometimes things, even good things like work or family, events, and plans, they take our mind off what matters. It's hard to find God when our minds, our actions, our hearts, our schedules are always centered around other things. How does one get rid of the sin and the distraction? It's multifaceted, and ultimately, however, you will not eliminate the power of sin over your life until you have another master, namely Jesus Christ. Without this crucial step, finding Jesus will prove a frustrating pursuit because your loyalties will lie elsewhere. But if you're a skeptic about Jesus and Christianity, just humor me for a little longer, and maybe this will give you some pointers, some ideas of what Christians, how they think, how they process life, how they pursue God. And maybe if by chance you're interested, you'll know how to pursue God. Here are 4 of the many steps, whether you believe in Jesus or not, that can help you begin the process of seeking the Lord. I would say the first point is to do some spring cleaning. Clear out the closet, move around the furniture, basically get things in your life that are clogging the way out of the way. Don't do things that you know would be morally questionable in the eyes of God. And don't busy yourself so much that you don't have time to breathe or to think. For me, that involves, turning off the radio or just going for a leisurely stroll or even just sitting down on a couch for a while and just letting my mind wander. Let it think, let it breathe. Number 2 would be struggle with God's literature, with the Bible. Try reading the Bible somewhat regularly and with an open mind. Because if you come with an agenda, it's not going to work. You're not going to find God because you are trying to pinpoint God in your agenda. We don't create God through our agenda. God creates our agenda. So maybe the only agendas you can have when coming to the Word would be maybe curiosity and the desire to find Him. Number 3 would be to talk to God. If you think that it would be a waste of time, just think about how much you do in the day that is a waste of time. Then just humor the idea that maybe praying isn't a waste. And even if it is, then it's no different than what you would have done anyways. So just humor the idea that it's not a waste. And then you could tell him that you would like to find him if he exists. If you're a skeptic and you don't believe he exists, well, if you're 95% sure he doesn't exist, but there's still 5%, hold on to that 5% and say, hey, maybe a prayer to God and ask him to show himself is not a bad idea if there's that 5% still left. I guess point number 4, and this one's really important to me, is to talk with people who are seeking the Lord. That would be maybe friends that are Christians, people that believe in Jesus. It could mean listening into community groups that are all pursuing God, whether it's in a church or it's in just a small group of friends, or it's something even smaller like a mentor or a friend that can kind of help guide. Because ultimately, if we do it alone, we're going to get discouraged. So we really need friends to help us seek the Lord. So ultimately, making room for God, seeking Him through the Bible, talking to Him, and talking to other God pursuers are probably the 4 most crucial practical steps you can take to finding Him. There's a passage in the Bible, in the book of Hebrews, where the author talks about throwing off hindrances and weights, or basically clearing out the closet and running towards Jesus and setting our eyes on Jesus. It's a great passage about what I'm talking about. And if you'd like to read it, it's in Hebrews 12. It's a great passage. I would recommend it. Running and setting our eyes tells us 2 things. It tells us that you need discipline and you need desire. If you have no discipline or desire to find God, you will not find Him. However, you don't have to have a lot of desire. Jesus said in the Bible that if you have the faith of a grain of mustard, a mustard seed, you can move mountains. Basically, that's saying that even if you have the tiniest little bit of faith, that can turn into something a lot greater, that can become powerful. It may take more discipline, it may take more digging, more trusting, more building of that desire. But even if you have that 95% where you're sure He doesn't exist, but you still have that 5% where you think He might exist, you can run with that. And like I gave you those points before, but with that 5%, you can go far. And I hope that everyone listening does desire to know Jesus. But if you don't, I want you to consider this. Jesus, Christians believe Jesus, He became a man so He could empathize with humanity. He helped hurting people. He uprooted the religious corruption in the day that was ruining people's lives. He was killed because of it as an innocent man. Yet He, at the same time, accomplished taking the punishment of all wrongdoing across the world of all time so that every person could be freed from their wrong and have the hope, the unfading hope of a connection with God and an eternity with Him. Now, whether you think that's a fairy tale or not, doesn't that sound like someone who's worth desiring, or at least considering? On a personal level, there's no greater pursuit than to pursue Jesus. I have had no greater peace, purpose, joy, love than in my pursuit to Jesus. He found me and showed me what He is all about. And since then, I have been addicted, basically, to know the person in whom every good thing is found. There's so much more I could talk about that surrounds the phrase to seek the Lord, but I hope this basic overview had some practical points that could either help you, educate you, teach you. If you don't believe in Christianity, if you don't believe in Jesus, I hope it at least taught you something about what Christians mean when they say seek the Lord. If you do believe, I hope it gave you some good points to help you understand how you need to change things in your life to pursue God better. And if you're interested in belief, I hope it gave you some gateways into pursuing God. Thank you so much for listening into this episode about seeking the Lord. I hope it was really enjoyable to you. If it was, go ahead and like this page. If you are enjoying the show so far, go ahead and subscribe so you can hear more to come. I'll see you next time.